Alright, so y'all go ahead and do the factoring and the math knowledge question for today. Pause the video, and then once everyone is finished, you can unpause the video and I'll go over the correct answers. So for the factoring, you should have two numbers that multiply to give you negative 18 and add to give you, or subtract to give you 3. So you're going to want to pick 6 and 3. And the 6 is going to be positive and the 3 is going to be negative, because 6 minus 3 is a positive 3, and 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. Okay, for the math knowledge question, we have a plane, P, and a 3-inch line segment, P. How many lines in P bisect S? The line segment. So here's our plane, and then we have a line segment, and we want to know how many lines bisect it. So bisecting it would make it go through this point, so that this side and this side are congruent. So does this line bisect these? Yes. What about this line? Does it bisect it? Yes. This one, and this one, and this one. There are infinitely many lines that will bisect that line segment. They just have to go through the midpoint right there. So infinitely many lines can go through there. Okay, so we are looking at lesson 10 today. We're going to be using conditional statements. So hopefully you'll understand how to do conditional statements after this lesson. So a conditional statement is a statement in the form of if P, then Q. P is your hypothesis and Q is your conclusion. So if it's raining outside, then recess gets canceled. Or if the football team makes it to the second round in the playoffs, then we will get dismissed for half a day for the next game. Something, it doesn't matter what. If P, then Q. That's a conditional statement. The hypothesis is the part that is in between the word if and then. So if whatever, then the part in between the if and then is the hypothesis. And then the conclusion is the part that follows the then. So we want to identify the hypothesis and conclusion for each of these. So I'm just going to say hypothesis H and conclusion for C. So the hypothesis on this one would be 2x minus 2 equals 4. You don't include an if or then when you're writing your hypothesis and conclusion. For this next one, the conclusion would be x equals 3. So that's your hypothesis and your conclusion. So y'all try B real quick, pause the video, and then I'll go over it. So your hypothesis should be there is an intruder. And your conclusion is well, the alarm will sound. They actually omitted the then here, which is okay. If there's an intruder, the alarm will sound. You don't need the then. So the alarm will sound would be your conclusion. So that would be how you identify your hypothesis and your conclusion. It's not terribly difficult. So now we're going to talk about truth value. And so truth value is the truth or falsity of your conditional statement. So is it true or is it false? So we want to determine whether the statement is true or false. And if it's false, you want to explain why. So on the first one, if an angle is a right angle, then it measures 90 degrees. Is that true or false? It is true. All right angles measure 90 degrees. So that one is true. It says for the next one, if two angles are complementary, they both measure 45 degrees. Hopefully you're thinking false for this one. And the reason it is false Complementary just means that the two angles add up to 90. So angle A plus B equals 90 degrees. It does not mean that A and B have to be equal. So if they are both 45, then those two angles are complementary. But just because they're complementary doesn't mean they both have to measure 45 degrees. Okay, so now let's look at converse. So the converse is where you exchange your hypothesis and your conclusion. So it's going to become if Q, then P. So instead of if P, then Q, your converse is if Q, then P. So we're going to write the converse of each statement and then determine whether the converse is true. So our hypothesis, our P is an animal is an eagle, and our conclusion, our Q, is it has wings. So for part A, our converse is going to be if. Now if I say if it has wings, we don't know what the antecedent of it is. Hopefully you've heard of antecedent, but we don't know what it is referring to because it hasn't, we're just starting our statement. So what you want to do is make sure that your statement makes sense grammatically and that it makes sense when you read it. So if it, the it is referring back to an animal. So we need to say if an animal has wings, then it is an eagle. So you do have to think about it a little bit. You can't just switch them automatically. You kind of have to read it and make sure that it makes sense. So if an animal has wings, then it is an eagle. Is that a true statement? It is false. What's an example of an animal that has wings that is not an eagle? A butterfly. A penguin. Lots of animals have wings. They're not eagles. So pick one. Okay? For B, this is our hypothesis, and this is our conclusion. So we would say if x equals 3, then 4x plus 3 equals 15. So if x equals 3 and we plug 3 in here, 4 times 3 is 12, plus 3 does equal 15. So that is a true statement. If x equals 3, 4x plus 3 does equal 15. Okay, looking at another example, they give you a Venn diagram because we probably don't know much about a platypus and a male mammal and a male platypus. So they tell you the information in the Venn diagram. So first we want to write the converse. So again, that's where you switch your hypothesis and your conclusion. So an animal is a platypus and it is a mammal. So what would the converse be? Hopefully you're thinking if an animal is a mammal, then it is a platypus. And so if an animal is a mammal, then it is a platypus. Is that a true or a false statement based on the Venn diagram here? It is false. Are there other mammals besides just a platypus? Yes, there are lots of them. There are all the ones over here. A bear is a mammal. A lion is a mammal. There are lots of mammals that are not platypuses. For this one, we want to write the converse. A platypus is venomous. It is a male. So the converse would be if a platypus is a male, then it is venomous. So let's look here. Male platypuses are here because that's where male and platypus overlap. And what does it say here? Those are the platypus that have venom. So if it is a male, then it is venomous. That is true. So that's how you do converses. So let's look at some practice problems. Y'all try these, and then once you've tried them, I'll go over them. So the hypothesis for the first one would be this part, x equals 4 and y equals 2. The conclusion would be 2x plus 3y equals 14. Okay, for this next one, the hypothesis would be an apple is a golden delicious apple, and the conclusion would be it is yellow in color. For the next one, the hypothesis would be 2 points are collinear, and the conclusion would be they are also coplanar. And it says determine whether the statement is true or false. If 2 points are collinear, then they are also coplanar is a true statement. Because 3 points always make a plane. So if we only have 2, we still can make a plane out of them. We can make infinitely many planes, but they are still going to be coplanar. Okay, for this next one, we want to find the converse of each statement and determine whether it's true. So y'all try these, and then pause the video, and we'll go over it. So the converse for this first one should be if x equals 3 or negative 3, then x squared equals 9. So x squared, 3 squared is 9, negative 3 squared is 9, so this is a true statement. For the next one, if it is Thursday, then it is Thanksgiving. Now, it is true that Thanksgiving only happens on Thursday, but does it happen every single Thursday? If it's Thursday, does that mean it's Thanksgiving? Thursday this week, is Thanksgiving happening? No, unfortunately not. So this is a false statement. It would be kind of nice to have Thanksgiving every single Thursday, but that's not how it works. Okay, looking at this last one, the converse is going to be if a cardinal is bright red, then it is a male. So you may need to use some information about biology to figure out this one, but if a cardinal is bright red, then it is a male. That is a true statement. Only the male birds have bright colors. So if it's a female, then it's not going to be bright red. Usually on the test, they're not ones that you have to know information like that. So don't worry about, oh, I didn't know that that was the case. Usually the questions on the test aren't ones that are terribly difficult. It's more related to geometry or basic stuff than anything, like Thanksgiving and Thursday. Y'all should know that information. So don't worry too much about knowing that your cardinals are red means that it's a male for the test questions. Okay, so let's look at the challenge question. We have Roger and Gilliland are playing a game where they are rolling number cubes. And if an even number is rolled, then the player has to clap. So y'all see if you can answer A, B, and C. So the converse would be if the player has to clap, then an even number was rolled. Is the converse true according to the rules of the game? Yes. They only have one rule that we are aware of. So if they roll an even number, they have to clap. So if they clap, that means they rolled an even number. So yes. What does the converse tell you if a player were to clap? Well, if a player were to clap, that means an even number was rolled. So that's how you should have answered the challenge questions. All right, your homework is 1 through 30, so make sure that y'all do that tonight so we can go over your questions